All right, let's get into it. There's a new report on the U.S. economy that is really making some waves, and it all boils down to this huge, dramatic shift in the country's trade balance. So today, we're going to unpack the numbers, the narrative, and the controversy behind this whole tariff turnaround.
So this is the big question at the center of it all. I mean, can tariffs really do that? It's a pretty bold claim, right? So let's dive into the data that kicked off this whole conversation in the first place.
Okay, so this is the chart that started everything. It's showing the U.S. trade deficit, that gap between what we import and what we export. Now, according to the Commerce Department data, that deficit just took an absolute nosedive. We're talking from a staggering $136 billion back in March 2025 down to just under $30 billion by October. That's not a dip, that's a straight-up cliff-edge drop, and it happened in just a matter of months.
So just how big of a deal was this shift, really? Well, the report puts these numbers into a pretty striking historical context.
Yeah, to give you some perspective on that drop, this wasn't just some minor blip on the radar. This marked the lowest the U.S. trade deficit had been since way back in 2009. That signals something fundamental was changing in the flow of global trade.
So the obvious question is, what on earth caused such a massive turnaround? Well, according to the report we're looking at, the explanation was actually pretty simple. It pointed the finger directly at one major policy. You see, the shrinking deficit really boiled down to two key things. The report credits a 3.2% drop in imports, because goods from other countries got more expensive, and at the same time, a 2.6% rise in American exports. That two-pronged shift basically reshaped the country's entire economic balance sheet. And of course, in a social media post that was cited in the report, Donald Trump took direct credit for it. He framed these numbers as a clear win for his tariff policies, going so far as to say they had rescued not just the economy, but national security too.
And that narrative got amplified quickly. Speaker Mike Johnson echoed that exact sentiment, arguing that these results weren't some kind of fluke, but the direct intended outcome of a very specific trade agenda.
Okay, but here's where the story gets really interesting. The report doesn't just show you these numbers in a vacuum. Nope, it puts them right up against some very different predictions that were being made just a few months earlier.
And right here, this is the core tension in a nutshell. On one side, you have Hakeem Jeffries' forecast from back in April 2025. He warned the tariffs would be historically bad, even crashing the economy. But then, on the other side, you have the reported outcome just 6 months later, the lowest deficit since 2009 and GDP growth looking strong. I mean, it is a whiplash-inducing contrast to say the least.
And the narrative of economic success didn't just stop with the trade deficit. The report also pointed to other key signs to argue that the whole economy was, firing on all cylinders.
So, beyond just the trade numbers, the report highlighted this forecast from the Atlanta Fed, a projected GDP growth rate of 5.4% for the fourth quarter. Now that's a number that doesn't just suggest growth, it suggests a booming economy.
And finally, to put it all in a global context, the report cited an economist's observation that the U.S. economy wasn't just growing on its own, it was actually growing faster than any of its G7 peers. This was framed as the ultimate proof of a uniquely strong economic performance. So, what are we left with? Well, we have two totally different stories, both sparked by the very same policies. One story predicted an absolute economic disaster. The other is claiming a record-breaking success. It really leaves us with a pretty fundamental question. When the numbers and the narratives are this far apart, how do we even begin to decide what's really going on with the economy?